everyone, welcome back to my page on this gorgeous Sunday. This week I wanted to discuss a topic that many of us relate to. Many of us have experienced, and we all know the pain and how devastating it is when you deal with a breakup. However, each breakup is subjective, and of course it depends on your relationship and you as a person as to how you feel about it. But there are certain stages that we all go through, certain motions and emotions that's the same and uniform across board. And that's where I think we could relate to each other as people. We know the feelings, we can relate to it, we can sympathize with it. So if we have a better idea of the do's and the don'ts of when it comes to dealing with a breakup, then it'll be easier for us to understand and manage our heartache, heartbreak, and pain. If you haven't been to my page, welcome. I'm Hamasa. I look at mental and emotional well-being, personal development, as well as day-to-day issues. Please do subscribe to my page so that you're up to date with all my content. And if you have any topic suggestions for me, please write them in the comments below. I always read them, and hopefully I can cover them for you. Breakups are not easy. They are literally the grieving of death of a relationship. You're basically grieving someone who is still alive. Of course, not all breakups feel like that. And of course, it just depends if you're heartbroken or not. But most times, it's a sad time. It's a time of endings. And we all go through these stages at different times. Everybody's journey is very different. Some people will feel certain emotions at the start. Some people feel it in the end. But they kind of are uniform. The video isn't necessarily about the stages of a breakup per se. It's about if you do go through a breakup and you feel certain things or you want to deal with it in certain ways, which is a number of things that people do. I want to highlight the do's and don'ts of each one of those because everything needs to be done in moderation. We're emotionally vulnerable. We're not thinking straight. Sometimes we're out for blood. We want revenge. We want to make a point. Sometimes we're very devastated and we're acting out of character. Our guard is down. Our vulnerability is out in the open, and people can take advantage of that. So whichever way you choose to deal with your breakup, you need to be conscious of the things that you're doing that may shoot you in the foot or just prolong your healing or just make things worse for you. So whatever it is that you choose to do, just be wary of what you're doing. For example, if you're someone who's really feeling sad and really devastated and broken, what's right to do is to allow yourself to feel sad. Because, like I said, you are grieving the end of a bond, a relationship, a person, something. So it's inevitable for you to feel sad or to feel down or to feel upset. And if you ask for help from your friends or you turn for support, there is no shame in that. There's no weakness in that. And you shouldn't self-punish. You shouldn't play it off. You know, like I say, you don't feel it, you don't heal it. So the more you push it away and pretend like you're okay, the more it's going to catch up with you at some other time. So allow yourself to be upset. Allow yourself to be sad. You have a right to. But what not to do is to stay in that sadness and let it consume you. And then you become your story. You have lost your identity. You are not you anymore. You are just this trauma. You are the story. You're walking around wearing it on your sleeve and want the whole world to know that you're such a victim and you're so sad. You have a right to be sad, so you are a victim. And that kind of mindset is very different to understanding that I'm dealing with an ending. I'm allowed to be upset, grieve it, cry, but then accept and move on. Or you just ruminate. The next thing would be overthinking. Now, overthinking is quite similar to sadness because you overthink and you get sad, but what I want to particularly focus on when it comes to overthinking is that when we try to push the thought aside Because when you're really upset, it's bound for you to wake up thinking about that, go to sleep thinking about that, doing your day-to-day chores, you're thinking about that, is taking over. And that's where like you start feeling more and more sad because you're going down memory lane instead of being in the present moment. What's important in this instance is that it's okay to think about it because it's happened, but instead of letting it consume your whole day and your thoughts and everything you do in the day, people you interact, your work, everything else, is to give yourself a time limit and allow yourself to really like dwell and wallow in your sadness and overthinkingness and upsetness for like 45 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour a day if you really need it. And if you tell yourself in the morning when you wake up that, you know what, I know that I've put like half an hour from 7:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. to just really think about everything, overthink every possible option, every possible scenario, let myself feel it, let myself face it, let myself drown in my thoughts, and then once the timer hits, I will snap out of it and not let it overtake my day. When you do that, you give yourself that kind of closure and satisfaction of knowing that, okay, don't overthink now, don't let it take over you, make you feel upset, bring all these emotions up, because I know that I'm going to have this time to feel all these things later on, so just hold it together, soldier on, stay strong, and I will be fine, and then I can have my moment. So the do is that give yourself time to think about it, cry if you need to, let the thoughts take over. But the don't is to not do that the entire day. Give yourself a time limit and allow yourself to be upset and sit in your thoughts. Another thing most people do after a breakup is to want to keep in touch, want answers, wanting closure, keeping communication open, and talking to their ex to understand why this happened, because they've overcome the shock, they've overcome the denial, they are now trying the bargaining. So they're trying to discuss with their partner what went wrong, how it happened, trying to find the blame, point fingers, overanalyze. Now, when it comes to communication, you've broken up for a reason. You cannot be friends. You cannot be friends right away. You both need healing time. If you've overcome the healing time and you're both in a good place, of course you can be friends. You're adults. You've liked each other at some point, so clearly there was some common ground, and you can probably get to that stage again. However, when it comes to general communication and keeping in touch, you're keeping yourself stagnant. You're keeping yourself there. You're holding on to hope. You start performing to get a reaction, get some sort of communication if you keep the communication lines open. For example, if you haven't blocked them on social media or you haven't removed each other as friends, then you post things to see if they watch it, to see if they've paid attention, if they've liked it, or what they're doing. And so your life becomes constantly consumed around trying to find some sort of communication with your ex. So it's important to understand that the closure really comes from you, because no matter what they say to you, the damage is already done. And it doesn't really matter. You don't need to chase that closure from them. If you want them to know that they did you wrong, most likely they know that they did you wrong and they still chose to do that. So you giving them this final lecture or a long text message or trying to get your feelings off your chest and think that you're going to feel any different, you're not, because they're not going to show you the remorse that you expect. And if anything, you're showing more weakness, you're making yourself more vulnerable, only to be belittled, humiliated, and dismissed once again. So the closure should come from you. Communication is a don't, but if there must be communication because there are kids involved or pets involved, then understand that it needs to be to a minimum. This person right now is not your friend. You cannot be friends with them because it's not good for your mental well-being, nor it is for them. So the don't of communication is just don't communicate. The do is that if you must, understand and set real limits and boundaries and they have lost the privilege of knowing your whereabouts and what you're up to and who you're with. So you don't need to tell them and report everything to them. You guys are meeting up to see the pet or whatever, set time, set date, keep it very like, we're here to do this, we're not friends, we're not hanging out, don't question me, I don't want to question you. The next thing would be, is that picking up new hobbies and doing new things. It's important for us to be doing things like that. So this is something that a lot of people tend to do. The reason it's very important is because we tend to kind of lose our identity and ourselves and likes and dislikes and merge into this one person, especially when we're in long-term relationships. So the reason it's important for us to go out and do new things and experience new things is because we need to refine ourselves. We need to figure out what we like and who we are without this person in our lives. So it's very, very important for us to throw ourselves out there and really do things and push ourselves out to find ourselves again. But what happens here that some people tend to use this as an opportunity to try and become the person that they think their ex wanted them to be. So picking up hobbies, going to places, hanging out in areas or hanging out with mutual friends that they know that their ex likes, knows, or a word would get back to them. So doing everything that you're doing and all these new hobbies and all these new things, even though you're trying to make it seem to yourself and your friends that you're doing it because you're trying out new things, the real reasons of that is for you to try and become this person that you're not, just to please your ex or win them back. And that's the don't of picking up new hobbies and activities and friends. Don't do that if it's because you're doing it to get your ex's attention. Do it because it makes you feel good and it's you discovering yourself all over again. Post the trauma, post the heartbreak, the new version of you. Who have you become now, past the relationship? Another thing that most people do after a breakup is to try and meet new people, new friends, new circles. And where that's great, and it's definitely advisable, and I recommend it because it's great. Like you see that there are so many good people out there in the world. There's so much for you to discover, and it gives you hope again, and you're excited again because these new people are coming into your life. You're discovering new stuff. If you're going to meet all these new people, socialize and then start telling them about what's happened to you or your ex, and you're such a victim and you're so upset and you went through this and then you're not being in the present moment. You're not giving these new people a chance. You are just wanting people to vent out to, and you are still living in your trauma. So instead of using this as a positive, to have a clean slate and, be open to new friends, you are instead just bringing that emotional baggage with you everywhere and kind of offloading onto them. And another side note that I'd say to consider when you're meeting new people or throwing yourself out there is that remember that you're vulnerable. And so you're not judging people as you would when you have yourself all together and you're not emotionally so fragile. So that's why you may be a little bit off with your judgment, and not all these people deserve to know the ins and outs of your trauma. You don't know if you could trust them. You don't know if they deserve to know you like that. So it's important for us to understand that these people are great and I love spending time with them and I have fun with them and I'm going to keep an open mind, but the friendship needs to organically grow. It's not like I'm replacing my ex with these new people, so I'm going to cling on to them and they're suddenly the most important thing in my life, because it just means that you're taking all of that emotional baggage and bringing it into your new friendships. So the do is go out there, meet people, be open and give people a chance, but the don't would be to know the boundary, not to give too much away, and also really give the people the opportunity and get to know them and be present with them when you're there, instead of bringing your emotions and living in your head and just being sad when you're out and about and using them as kind of either a punching bag or someone to offload to. And finally would be moving on. Of course, moving on is something that we all need to do. And it doesn't mean necessarily with someone else, it just means moving forward with your life. But if it means with someone else for you, The don't is don't do it too quickly, because like I said in my previous point, you're just going to take the emotional baggage of one relationship into the next. And it's not fair. And if you haven't taken the time to understand and know where it went wrong, take accountability for the things that you did, understand the things that your partner did, understand why you guys didn't work, what you learned from it, what's the silver lining, heal from it, you will then end up in the same situation again. Because if you don't learn your lesson, you will keep getting punched around the head until you do. Life will teach you, life will slap you in the face over and over again until you learn that lesson. And until that you realize what it is that you're being taught here. So if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So you do the same things, you get the same results. You move on too quickly, you're gonna go through the same stages all over again a couple months later. So moving on is important, but do it once you've given yourself time to digest what's happened, understand it, heal from it, and then have a clean slate. Bring your experience and knowledge to the table. Move forward cautiously, understanding the whole context of the situation and being better for it because you've learned something new from your last experience, and you can use that as a positive for your next relationship. And also don't do it out of revenge. Moving on to make a point to make the other person jealous will only make you feel more crappy, because that person's left you, they've moved on. You might annoy them a little bit for 20 minutes, they'll get over it. They're minding their business. You are making yourself emotionally vulnerable. You are making irrational decisions just to make a point, and in the end, you're the one who's going to feel a bit silly about it, because when you calm down and the dust settles, you may have not wanted to move on so quickly or put yourself out there and be responsible with it. So make sure that when you move on, it's all for the right reasons and you are ready for it. And then you give the next person, because hurt people end up hurting people. So if you're going around being hurt, you're going to end up hurting your next partner, and it's just a vicious cycle. So I hope that you guys found this helpful. Breakups are never easy. No matter how long you've been with the person, it depends how much they've impacted you or how you felt about them. So it's not a question of time. It's not about length of time, it's quality. And so certain short relationships can impact you so much more than very long-term relationships, and vice versa. So like I said, they're all different, they're all subjective, but they all hurt. Not only because you're necessarily heartbroken or they really did something wrong, it's a sense of pride, it's a sense of rejection, it's a whole heaps of other things that make a breakup just crappy. So knowing what to do with these things, understanding your limits and boundaries, knowing the do's and don'ts will just help you navigate this difficult time a little bit more easier and better. So if you have found it helpful, please subscribe to my page, like and comment on this video, and please do share it with someone who's dealing with a breakup, unfortunately. And I'll see you guys here again very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Mwah.